Welcome back to the studio, and today I'm going to answer some of the questions, if not all of the questions that you've asked me over the last 2 months that this channel has existed. So yeah, I uploaded the first video to this channel 2 months ago, almost to the day. I think it was the 20th of May that I uploaded the first video, and I'm absolutely chuffed to bits with the way it's going. I'm so grateful for the community that's already gathered here as well. The comments are lovely. You're all such wonderful, lovely people, so well informed. So many of you are further on your morning pages journey than I am. And it's so just lovely to welcome people into this room, because otherwise it's quite a sort of solitary experience, as I'm sure many of you will know, sitting here scribbling away, editing my videos. So it's been such a wonderful journey anyway, and I'm really chuffed with how it's going along. So I thought it was high time that I went back through all the comments you'd asked me and picked out the questions. I may have answered some of them sort of briefly in text, but say I can expand on it a little bit more verbally. So I'm going to start in reverse order and just try and answer these just as naturalistically as possible. There'll have to be a little bit of editing, otherwise this video will probably be about 3 days long. But I'm going to go back to the first question that I received. It's JB who says, I love notebooks. I'm reading off the screen, by the way, you'll see my eye going over here. I love notebooks a lot. I love them. Is it always lines though, or do you ever like dots or squares? Looking forward to more of these. I've recently talked about some of my favourite notebooks and some of the options I've gone through for morning pages. I do write inline notebooks a lot. I think it's the convenience of it, but I think my favourite is dots, dot grid. I do like squares, as long as the squares are quite faint. My next morning pages book, I'm about to finish the Moleskine Cahiers that I've been working on. How's the pronunciation? And I'm going to move onto this roll band. I'll be starting this on Monday, and you see this has got a very faint square. I really like this. And actually, you know, the old-fashioned kind of school notebooks that you can just buy in any kind of newsagents, I used to love the squared versions of those, and I actually might pick some up for morning pages at some point, although they're A4, so I'll be making a big step up in terms of size. Next question. Ray Mail asked, how do you access your many notebooks as sources of ideas and insights? Is it just a matter of flicking through them, or do you have an indexing system? Do you digitize any? Oh, that's from Lindsay. I think I answered this at the time. I actually did a short about this as well. I don't index them as such, but what I do is I regularly reread my old notebooks, and then I pick out any bits I want to carry forward, and then I copy them into my latest notebook. So there's a continuous process of kind of copying over ideas. Sometimes they'll go into Word documents if they're useful for something I'm working on at the time. But I think I just have a really good kind of memory actually of what's in the notebooks. And of course the great thing with the Leuchtturm notebooks, we only started using a couple of years ago, is you have an index at the start. So I'm regularly trawling through my notebooks for ideas and then transferring those into either my current pocket notebook or my notes app on my phone. I'll talk a little bit about that actually, how I use that in a separate video. So what I'm thinking of doing though is actually creating a morning pages index. I've got quite a strange book. I'll show it to you actually. It's a Moleskine that I picked up just randomly at Christmas, and it's called Moleskine Chapters, and it's a strange book. I mean, obviously here it's normal, but then you have these breaks in it like this, and then you have these kind of to-do lists at the back. I don't know if this will work as a standard pocket notebook, but I'm thinking of using this as a morning pages index where I'll go through my morning pages and then just make a reference via date and then just a very brief summary of the thing that I think is worth writing down and perhaps revisiting for future use. There's been quite a lot of good stuff in the last month actually that I want to work on. Ideas for stories, certainly ideas for walks and trips, but also the attitude to them as well, as much as the content. Someone once said that to me about comedy actually. It's not the material that counts, it's your attitude to the material that counts. And I think that applies to a lot of creative output. Jim says, when are you going to take writing seriously and be a writer's iconoclast? Start again. And be a writer's iconoclast and start again. When am I going to take writing seriously? Hopefully never, Jim. never want to take it too seriously, do you? I don't know what you mean by that. I think, do you mean write fiction? Because some people think writing non-fiction isn't taking it seriously, which is ironic, isn't it? Whereas writing fiction makes you a proper sort of writer. I am going to have a stab at fiction. I've talked about that in at least one of these videos, and I've had some ideas recently for stuff that I really want to explore. And because I'm not a historian, I can't really do it as non-fiction. And I know I do use history as material in my books, but I don't claim to be a historian. Whereas with this idea, I would necessarily, I think, need to, it would need to be a piece of fiction in order to explore this idea. So I'm going to have a stab at that. Yeah, watch this space. Also watch John Rogers' walks, where there will be a walk around this topic. Hint. Rhinosphere says no typewriter. No typewriter. No, I'm analog, as in terms of mechanical. I love writing with pens and paper. Since I started this channel, I've got my Quaco Sport fountain pen. I used to write with a fountain pen loads, particularly when I lived in Sydney 30 years ago. Wow, 30 years ago. When I lived in Sydney 30 years ago, I used to write a lot with a fountain pen. So I've gone this analog. Typewriter, too much bother. I obviously used to write with a typewriter before I had a computer. When I was living in New Cross and I was trying to do a lot of writing, I was trying to write poetry then as well as articles. I used to type them all out. I'd be clacking away there at night time with an electric typewriter. Do you know what? I don't remember how on earth I did it. It had a correction tape in there as well, so you could go back and type over words. It was a good typewriter, that. My sister gave it to me, I think. Bill Bones says, hi John, I recall you mentioning that you're a fan of Nick Hornby's High Fidelity. I am, very much so. Me too, what a book. Particularly enjoyed the lists that appeared throughout. I have a suggestion. How about a writer's room top 5 feature? That's a great idea. You pick a topic on a weekly, monthly basis and we post our lists in the comments. The more random, the better. Good luck with the new channel. Isn't that a wonderful idea? Yeah, they used to do that. The High Fidelity is a wonderful book, and I think the reason I really liked it is I'm a vinyl addict, so I used to be a lot worse, obviously, than I am now. And I used to, if I went to a record shop, my wife knew it was going to be like 2 hours. Don't matter how big the record shop was, I'd be gone. I was lost. And so that aspect of the book massively appealed to me. But also, it's set around the area where I was living. When I read it, I was living in Highbury at the time. Of course, Nick Hornby is famous for being an Arsenal football club supporter. And that book was sort of set around, well, it's contended, isn't it? But it's sort of set around Holloway Road and towards Archway, I believe. So there's a sort of sport amongst people for picking the actual places that Hornby is referring to. Like, can you find the record shop? Do you know what the pub is? There's a few candidates actually for both. And the staff in the record shop they're like staff in record shops, independent record shops. They're of a type, right? Or they were of a type. And they would do things like, top 5 breakup albums, I can't try to remember what the other top 5s were. They're brilliant. So that's a lovely idea, Bill. Let's try and think. I'll set some top 5s. What are morning pages? Keeping a diary. Hopefully, Beeswax Minder, I've answered that question in my various morning pages diaries, my various morning pages videos. Was it, can morning pages really change your day? That's interesting. I wonder whether that's quite a crushing comment if you think about it, because it's on a video where I'm talking about morning pages. But my understanding of morning pages, as I mentioned in that video actually, is it's a way of journaling in the morning where you just you free associate, write freely without judgment, without trying to sculpt a piece of writing. You just write whatever comes into your mind on 3 sides of paper. A lot of people use A5. Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way. The idea comes from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, and she recommends US letter paper, which is roughly, if you're elsewhere in the world, is like B5 composition, which is currently what I'm using, this size of notebook. So it's a Moleskine Cahier extra large. That's the perfect size for me. And that's it really. It's just a way of opening and freeing your mind in the morning, clearing the decks, and an amazing way to start the day. And I'll be talking more about morning pages throughout. I mean, it's really, if you like, it's become the theme of this channel, hasn't it, in a lot of ways. Hope that answers your question. Other people will reply in the comments with their idea of what it is as well. Anna says, great new start, John. The Flood by Blue Orchids comes to mind, in particular its opening line, roller coaster mind arrives right on time, hold on. By the way, what are the Winterbottom scripts? That was the question. Well, I'm glad I read the first bit as well. The Winterbottom scripts, that's a box file which is behind me here. And basically there's some film script, well, it's a film script, it's various drafts of a film script that I worked on with the brilliant film director Michael Winterbottom, who was one of my favourite directors. When I say was, it's not like that's changed, it's just I haven't seen any of his films for a while, but certainly at the time I worked on the script, he was a big inspiration for me, and it was a real buzz. It was a huge thing to get to work on some scripts with him. Well, one script actually, and then we wrote the drafts. We wrote those drafts over a period. It didn't take very long. It was adapted from a book, and we must have worked on the drafts over about 3 to 4 weeks, and we were exchanging papers every day, exchanging pages every day, I should say. And there was me, Michael Winterbottom, and another writer, and the three of us kind of divided up the book because it was like a bit of time pressure to get it done. We divided up the book, and then we wrote our version, our adaptation of that section of the book. Then we would swap pages with each other, and then rewrite. Each person would rewrite the other person's pages, and kept going around like that. And after not very long at all, I think it was no more than a month, we had the draft of a script that the producer was confident they could take to get funding. The film never got made in the end. That's often the way with films. I've had a script optioned before, a treatment, not the whole script, so I should say, but a sort of detailed 20-page treatment optioned by a big studio in Hollywood. That never got made. I don't think the script even, well, I don't know. I mean, the way it works is they just bought the option on the treatment, and I never heard about it ever again. It certainly didn't get made, so whether a script ever got written or not, I don't know. You just have to go into that world knowing that, and having been a little bit behind the scenes, not much, by the way, I don't have much experience in the world of commercial film production, but what I did see made me think it's a miracle anything ever gets made. Yeah, I mean, usually the directors and the top actors who are the names attached to scripts to get them funded, they've usually got a bunch of projects on the boil, and it's whichever one gets greenlit first is the one that gets made. And then, it only takes one piece of the jigsaw puzzle to kind of fall apart, and then the whole project kind of goes by the wayside. But it was still an amazing experience. It taught me an awful lot, and that's quite a long time ago now. It was 2007, 2008 really, yeah. And it was great. And what I took away from it actually was Winterbottom's attitude, Michael Winterbottom's attitude to writing was just was the momentum, just keep going. Very open-minded, very rarely had any comments about the scripts, the pages that me and the other writer wrote. If we had comments on what he'd written, he was very open to it. He said, well, change it, which was intimidating because it was like, yeah, how can I change Michael Winterbottom's script? I don't know what I'm doing. He's made loads of films, but he was like very open, and you'd be waiting for him to come back and not like what you changed. And he was like, no, great. I mean, generally, not to go into the details, generally the changes were, me and the other writer were generally trying to make it funnier and a little bit more surreal, whereas his take on things tended to be a bit more, how should I say, literal and visceral. So there was this kind of trying to get this balance between the rawness of the story, but also introduced a bit of humour and a bit of surrealism into it as well. It was a great experience. He was a wonderful bloke to have met and to have worked with. Yeah, it was a real inspiration. John, what about Wardlock's London? Yeah, I read Warlock instead of Wardlock's London. That was a short I made. Wardlock's London is great. They're little guidebooks. I don't have it in this room with me, but it's a 1935, I think, guidebook to London, and it's a little red book, and it has amazing fold-out maps. It's the size, a little bit bigger than a pocket notebook, but really thick, and the maps fold out. It's just a real delight, and I used to use it loads before I started making regular YouTube videos on John Rogers walks on my main channel. But I should probably start using it again, actually. It's really, really wonderful books. You can pick them up, well, you used to be able to pick them up on eBay, relatively cheap. Paula says, awesome, I love this new venture. Thanks, Paula. Me too. How do you keep discipline of journaling and writing going? I've done it over the years, but never consistently. Months will go by without writing. I feel guilty, no idea why. Well, I would say the first thing is don't feel guilty. I think guilt about things like this won't help. It's quite a negative emotion, guilt, so, you know, keep it for the things that may be better, you know, where that's appropriate. But I don't know, it's just part of my life. I always have a pocket notebook with me. I rarely go anywhere at all without a pocket notebook. I just went to the opticians today, funnily enough, and I didn't take a notebook with me because I thought I'd be in and out quickly, and I really regretted it because obviously I had to hang around for a bit. And I was like, I'd love to write now. With morning pages, I kind of kept that. That's why I had the 30-day thing, is that if I could do it for 30 days, it would become an ingrained habit. That's what they say about establishing new habits. And that's what I did. I had it as part of my morning routine with the other things you do in the morning that, you know, that you always do. Like you might have your breakfast at a certain time. You might, you know, an order of things, an order that you do things in. I put morning pages as part of that, and I locked out that 20 minutes. And what's great is if I have to be somewhere at a certain time and I haven't got time, you know, I've only got a certain amount of time for when I've got up. I'm not a morning person, by the way. So I'll have morning pages instead of, I'll do morning pages, that's quite funny, instead of, say, having breakfast. That's how I do it. Just always have a notebook with you, and also build up an association. Like for me, I'll often journal and write in my notebook when I'm in the pub. So I stop and I'll write then, you know, and when I put my book on the table, I've got my pint and my crisps. Usually the first thing I'll do when I sit down in the pub is I'll start writing in my notebook, even if I just write a few lines. Train journeys as well, if I'm going on a train somewhere, that's when I'll scribble in my journal. Just get into a habit when I go for a coffee, if I'm on my own, that's when I'll write in my little pocket notebook. Those things, pick a time of the day when you're going to do it, and then try to repeat that over a period of time, and you know, you'll find before you know it, it just becomes instinctive. Do you read back what you wrote that morning when you do your morning pages? No, I don't read back after I finished it, because it's just a blur and I want to get it out of my head. And if I read it back, it would just be reintroducing it. To be honest with you, this book that's nearly finished, I've had, this will be about 6 weeks, 5 weeks. And I haven't really, I've read little snippets from the beginning. Other than that, I haven't read back. I know there's some stuff in here I really want to revisit. So I know it's there, and I'll revisit that when I'm ready to pick it out and work on it. But for me, it's a real cleansing process, a real clearing out. And so I really enjoy that. Question here, I'm not sure that I can't read the username, but the question here is, how do notes and jottings get used to inform your non-notes output in all its forms? Slightly answered that already, but just I can take it a bit further. The notes from my notebooks have ended up in, I mean, I've written 2 kind of full-length books, and I've written a sort of shorter book called The Black Path. The Black Path, the notes that I took on the walk that I actually did, hugely informed it. Likewise with my first book, This Other London, when I did those walks, I didn't make videos. I took lots of photographs, shot little bits of video, and I recorded bits of sound, and the notes were the basis for that entire book, This Other London. And likewise, Welcome to New London, less so because it was a little bit more of a mishmash, but certainly as a good half of that book was taken again very directly from my notebooks. So they've ended up in when I'm doing a walk, there's obviously a natural link between the two. When I'm making the videos for John Rogers Walks, I'll often write my research into notebooks, and then sometimes I'll copy that again onto pieces of paper I can take with me. But that is the main use, in a way. I'm trying to find it now. That was the main purpose for this wonderful little notebook that I forgot to include in my favourite pocket notebooks, because this is one of my favourites. These are great brands. I'm sure many of you will know these. These are Japanese, Life Vermilion. And yeah, look at that. Look at that paper. Isn't that delightful? And I use this pretty much for writing notes in that I'm going to take on the walks for John Rogers Walks. I do use my notes app a bit, particularly if I'm cutting and pasting things, but sometimes I'll write the summary out in this or on a piece of Muji loose paper that I bought I bought it for that reason, but that's what I started using for my morning pages as well. Do you have a list of your favourite books on writing? I don't actually. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have many books about writing. In fact, if I do, they're very old. I haven't actually used any books on writing for a very long time. I had a book about comedy, which I bought ages ago, but it wasn't so much about writing. Yeah, I don't have many books about writing, but what I do have is a few things where writers talking about writing. I'm going to now struggle to remember what they are. I mean, there's a really wonderful George Orwell essay called Why I Write. There's the great Jack Kerouac article, whatever you want to call it, called the Principles of Spontaneous Prose. These are all things actually I thought about making videos about. But in terms of books about writing, I've never really used them. I was never a big one for that. I went to workshops. I did workshops back in the day, as people like to say. But I never really, I think the best thing is to read good writers. Read writers writing the kind of thing that you want to write, and you'll learn a lot from that. I would love to see a video explainer about what your takeaways are. Yeah. I'm reading Thinking on Paper at the moment. Thanks. There you go, Thinking on Paper. So maybe I will look that up. I'm sure after this I will think of something. I mean, I had a great book. I think it was called like The Beginner's Guide to Documentary Filmmaking or something, and that was great. Obviously included a bit of writing in it. But John, how charming this is. I will buy the book. How are the morning pages going? Now, this is a month ago. Well, I'm going to read your name as Heidi, because that's how my wife's name is pronounced, but maybe your name is Heidi, which is more common, isn't it? The morning pages are going brilliant. I'm loving it. I'm trying to think now how long it is. It must be 70 something days now, something like that. Just before the channel started, so 65, 70 days. Loving it. It's just such an essential part of my day. I haven't missed a day for over a month, if not longer. So I love it. I love it so much. Such a important part of my day, and is such integral to my, just everything. I was going to say my mental health, my creativity. I'm writing more in my other notebooks. I'm just writing more, actually, as a general rule. Michael asks, this is a good question, have you ever come across Rupert Sheldrake and the idea of morphic resonance? The idea of external memory or any aspect of consciousness external to the body, physical body, fascinates me. I'd love to know what you think. I love the idea of morphic resonance, Michael. I think I first came across something like that when I made one of my very first YouTube videos. Well, it wasn't a YouTube video then, because when I shot it, YouTube didn't exist. I shot it in the summer of 2005. I uploaded it to YouTube, I think in 2007 or early 2006, and I was out walking with a wonderful writer called Nick Papadimitriou, author of a great book, Scarp, which is it's up there on my bookshelf somewhere. And Nick mentions me in the acknowledgements, which is so lovely. And in the hardback edition, they spelt my name wrong. But Nick's an amazing writer. If you haven't read Scarp, maybe I should do a piece with Nick about writing, actually. That'd be good. And I was filming with Nick, and I was really interested in filming walks, even though this is 20 years ago I shot this video. I've been doing this for a while, the whole walking and writing and videoing walks. And we were walking through a car park, and Nick stopped at one of those kind of like concrete bollards that you get, concrete fence posts. It was kind of slightly peeling away, and it had the iron supports sticking through the broken concrete, and it was sort of pebble dashed, and he's just patting it and looking at it, talking about how he saw objects like that as being storage vats of regional memory, and that regional memory and all the events, past lives, were contained in these concrete objects, which I loved that idea. I loved that idea. And then I do remember, I'll tell you actually, I remember who it was. It was a guy called a guy called Dan Schreiber, who was then he was a stand-up comedian. Well, was he stand-up? Yeah, he was doing stand-up comedy, and we just used to chat, and then me and another producer would try and, work out what was funny. And he started talking about morphic resonance and Rupert Sheldrake. Well, I don't know if you mentioned Rupert Sheldrake, but he started talking about morphic resonance and this idea that they'd noticed that cattle in, wherever it was, in Australia, started walking around the cattle grids, and before they knew it, cattle all over the world were walking around the cattle grids because they realised they could just go around the cattle grid. I don't know how true that is. It's a great idea. I mean, yeah, I'm tickled by it. Whether I'm tickled by it because I think it's real, or whether I'm tickled by it because it's just an entertaining idea, I don't know. I think it feeds into that idea of what they call it, the unified field. Now, I don't know if there's any science behind the unified field. Is that something from quantum physics or string theory? Haven't they shown something now with quantum entanglement when they've entangled atoms and then separated them and then affected one, and it has an effect on the other? I love it though. I love it as an idea. Isn't it beautiful? I wish things like that were real. I wish magic was real. I wish wizards were real. So anything like that, if someone adds some science to it, I'm in. But I was probably in anyway, just as a bit of woo. When I made the Is the River Alive video about Robert Macfarlane's collaboration with Field Notes, the Field Notes editions, those wonderful Field Notes Is a River Alive editions, these wonderful Is a River Alive editions that are tied in with Robert Macfarlane's book. Someone said, have you considered doing some Is This River Alive, or Is a River Alive, videos on rivers around London? I mean, I've made loads of videos of rivers around London, and I plan to make loads more, and I've done loads of Lost River videos as well. A good example of, in a way, if I was going to do that, I made a video about the River Wandle with my dear friend Professor Kate Spencer, who studies that kind of thing, and she knows a lot about pollution of rivers and stuff like that. And so when we walked the Wandle, Kate was able to point out certain aspects of pollution that were finding their way into that river, that wonderful chalk stream. And yeah, but obviously I'd love to do more, and yeah, maybe I will just take one of these with me. I'll try and work out which above ground rivers I haven't really made videos about. There's obviously quite a few, but I am working on a book about rivers in London at the moment as well, so I'm going to take these with me. And there are a few minor rivers that I haven't walked yet that I'm going to write about, so that's the perfect opportunity to make a video, write about it. Robert Macfarlane's book is, essential reading. Interesting question here. When I was doing morning pages for 30 days, I think, I talked about the way that it had changed the way my self-knowledge in a way, like because I could see repeated patterns written down, or I could feel them coming out. Actually, I didn't need to read them back to see it. I knew I was repeating certain things, and it was really interesting that these same things were coming into my mind. And he says, given what you say about coming to a realization about life, have you dabbled in Stoic philosophy? Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus? Not really. I think what's interesting actually, of all the philosophies or in schools of philosophy that exist, I think probably Stoicism is the one that's probably worked its way into mainstream thinking more than any other. Do you not think? I remember I used to listen to this podcast that the philosopher A.C. Grayling did about philosophy. And it was literally called What is Philosophy? And it was wonderful. It was made by the brilliant Resonance FM. And I used to do a show on Resonance FM. And they put out this, I think it was called the Resonance Summer School. And they got people who are experts in their fields to make these introductory audio podcasts about certain subjects. And A.C. Grayling, who is a wonderful professor of philosophy, made this introduction to philosophy. And I remember in that he said, often when people use philosophy in everyday speech, they'll say, someone's just being philosophical about something. They've had a hard time, or they've had some bad news, but they're being philosophical. He said, really what they mean by that is being stoic. It's one particular school of philosophy that people are referring to when someone says, you're being philosophical about this, or they're being philosophical. What they mean is stoic. I think it's really interesting that Stoicism is so popular now. I mean, the internet loves Stoicism, doesn't it? There's a big crossover, isn't there? I've noticed. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about this between journaling, notebooks, pocket notebooks, which is great with this world that this channel exists in. Stoic Philosophy. The one guy, actually one of the biggest channels, and a guy whose videos I really love, I think he's called Parker Notes. He's a philosopher, isn't he? Parker Notes is a philosopher, and he often talks about the Stoics and the philosophers, the Stoics, and also, you know, pocket notebooks and journaling and all those kind of things. And also, this is the wild card that will surprise you, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think, you know, now bear with me. So if you look at a lot of the people on YouTube who are the kind of internet philosophers, if you like, they've usually got a podcast. A lot of those podcast bros, they all do BJJ, and they're really into Stoicism. Not all of them do journaling. It's really interesting. My youngest son does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, not studying philosophy though, although Joe does read bits of philosophy. So I think that's a really interesting crossover. It's not something, I've not read enough philosophy, I'll be honest with you. And I studied politics, and I did a little bit of philosophy when I did politics, but it was mainly political philosophy. I've never been massively drawn to the Stoics. But it's interesting now that the times we live in, that Stoicism is having this revival, this real surge in interest. I think that's an interesting thing. And like I say, also people that are maybe testing themselves physically as well, because I know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from watching Joe do it. And in fact, I'm going to go and watch some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu this evening. It looks hard. I used to do judo, like as I call proper judo, as a joke to the BJJ people, but like judo, proper judo. BJJ looks so much harder, so much harder. I thought about returning to doing judo, and you know, my son was going, "Oh, you should do BJJs." I looked at him and went, "No way. There's no way I'm doing that." Suburban Leaves says, "How often do your morning pages bleed into your writing?" More and more. The main way it's going to bleed into my writing is it's loosening me up now. I'm mentally much freer. I see my own creativity in a very different way now. Not a very different way, but I've got a lot of clarity about things now. I feel a lot looser. A lot of the fear is gone. You know, particularly when I'm writing for publication, like I have a publisher for my next book. When you sit down to write, you know it's going to be printed, right? Or it needs to be, put it that way. And so that adds a certain amount of pressure. So I'm finding the morning pages is loosening me up for sure. And in terms of writing for my videos on John Rogers Walks, definitely. I mean, it's the way I approach it it's like I say, it's freeing me up psychologically. And you can. This is a type of writing now. It's interesting we think of writing as being with a pen. And I say, given my past working with comedians and you know, enabling people, should we say, or helping people to write comedy, this was an essential tool. The writing bit of it comes after, but you know, loosening people up through conversations with them or through getting them to talk about stuff we call that writing. You know, this is a form of writing in a way, which I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. In my one about comedy and creativity, I love this comment from Me the Rob. It's another person that's a regular commenter on John Rogers Walks. "Could you explain the one about the chicken crossing the road? I've never understood it." I love all the different variations on that. That's basically it. I mean, there's a couple of questions here about have I come across the Stellology Editors series 365 days, as good a notebooks as you get, in my opinion. They keep being advertised to me on Instagram, actually, so I'm eventually going to buy them. So it's interesting that you should bring it up. And also someone asked just 2 days ago, have I tried MD notebooks? No, I haven't. And again, I keep seeing them, so I think those notebooks will definitely be working their way into my little leather pocket notebook cover, I think, unless I go down the whole traveler's notebook rabbit hole. I mean, I'm going to go down all the various journaling rabbit holes, so you know, why not that one as well? So thank you for those amazing questions. Sorry if you've asked a question and I've skipped it. And I'll do one of these every few months. Look out for a morning pages video coming your way next week. And as I always like to say, that's the sign off from John Rogers Walks. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next page. Yeah, I think that is the sign off now, isn't it?